Yeah, and touching on the lighting some more too, I personally like visualizing the lighting with renderings. You get a better idea of how that light actually splashes across certain spaces. We went back and forth a lot on lighting types for these kitchen renderings.
A lot.
Yeah, with the owner, between us internally in the office, different lighting types, lighting shapes, locations, spacing. We even had, less lights and more lights. And ultimately it comes down to, a style we're aiming for, but also appropriate lighting for the function of the kitchen. So we're looking at task lighting. We're looking at just auxiliary lighting for aesthetic. Temperature of lighting you can look in here. John was saying we're looking at nighttime renderings, as you can see here, and then we're also looking at daytime shots. Oh, wrong way. Daytime shots. So we can give the owner an idea of different time of day, what that experience is like. So that's pretty powerful in that software that we're able to do that pretty quickly. And also we use Rhino 3D. John is a whiz in Rhino, and we can pick a light online and we can model that up completely. So we can put it in there, change everything about the light to match the real life version, and throw that right in the software so we can visualize that.
Yeah, really being able to choose whatever fixture we want. We can get it as close as possible in Rhino and model it in here. And then there's some other details that are a little bit more generic, books, canisters, candles, photos. All of those things are kind of pre-packaged into Lumion, so that allows us to place those in there separately. But those really unique things, like the light that Nick was just talking about, those gooseneck lights above the windows, those were something that we looked at online to find the right dimensions, find the scale, the color, and then bring those in here to show the client this is how big it's going to be. We don't have to guess. This isn't something that's going to be scaled down or up later, because we can figure it out right now.
Yeah, and for Robin's project specifically, we were looking at rendering the entire house. We're back in the Revit here again. We were looking at rendering the entirety of the house room by room, but the renderings do take a lot of time. So we ultimately decided to pick the kitchen because that's a very important space to the owners. And another space was the master bedroom. And I think this was a good blend for renderings because we have a public space and a private space. And these renderings will kind of set the tone for the rest of the rooms in the house. So it gives us a good idea of where to go with the styling of the rest of them. Even though we're not going to render all of it out, it gives us a good idea of where the homeowners are comfortable with in the design in general and where we should be heading. And oftentimes John is the hidden character behind this, because this project specifically, I'm talking to the clients, John's doing the rendering. So it's hard for that, to go back and forth, because John produces something, doesn't necessarily see the reaction, which can be a little frustrating with the amount of time that goes into it. But fortunately enough, these clients were super excited about these renders, so John was able to go pretty crazy with these ones.
Yeah, the rendering process can be tedious. We can do something that's like super quick, just put up 4 walls and call it a day. But when you really want to curate a space, especially for a client that wants to make these decisions, they want to see what this space feels like. They want to envision themselves in this space, adding in all these little details, putting in the bags or putting a towel or a blanket over a chair, putting the lights off on the side and having those lamps light up. All of these things are not necessarily something you're going to see just included in a rendering software. I can't just put a light down and it lights up. Each of these features has to be either modified or changed within the 3D modeling software or within Lumion, and actually adding a light piece that illuminates some pieces. So I think my favorite part of doing these renders is adding in all of these details that just make it that much more realistic. You'll be able to tell, that these aren't real photos. Some of them are very close, and once you look at them, you might think, wow, that is a photo. But for someone who does renders, or even if you're just in the rendering world of architecture, or even, looking at CGI for movies and TV shows, there are those little artifacts that are left behind that you start to notice. And you start to see, oh, okay, so these are renders, and you notice these little parts of it I like to try and get rid of those little parts. try and really minimize, like, some of the reflections are odd. Lighting is a huge thing. Lighting is always hard to mimic in rendering. So ray tracing is as close as you can get. And what ray tracing allows us to do is take a physical light source, so the sun, from outside, cast those light inside, and then it bounces off of our materials, just as real life. One thing with other rendering softwares, or if you're not using that feature in Lumion, is that it doesn't bounce light off of different materials. So you can see here the floor, that bluish hue and the orange hue that you can see on there is reflected from the outside. So it's not just taking some random color or random object, it's taking what's actually physically in that space, so the trees and the snow, and reflecting that on the inside, giving you a correct lighting scheme and allowing the warmth on the inside as well as the cold from the outside to really feel like you're in this space, and it is snowing outside.
Yeah, it's like building a photograph or building a scene.
Yeah, and I will say, I look at photos all the time. You know, that's one thing you try and mimic as much as possible is architecture photography. You know, when I started doing these renders the very first time, it's just taking random views. I would just be like, okay, this is a cool shot, or I would go vertical or whatever, just trying to make something look cool. And once you start to look at photography as the medium here, rather than just doing renders, that's where you can pick up those small details, getting the right shot to make it feel a little bit more realistic. Because I'm picturing myself here, taking that photo, looking out onto this spot. You know, I can see myself in the plan, in the kitchen, I'm looking out towards this one area or looking out towards this other area. And it really allows you to start putting it together. You know, I take a photo on my phone, it's one thing, but to try and recreate how a photo looks is a whole other game.
Yeah, and we're back in Revit here. So this is an example of the kind of views we can give in this sort of 3D software. So there's an idea of just the rudimentary 3D model. And you can see the inspiration behind the renderings. You know, this is what we're starting with. But you don't feel as connected to this. You're not in the space. It's clear you're looking at just fake objects, fake line work, and you don't capture subtleties like what the experience is on the kitchen island with the marble. You just see kind of opaque, bland surfaces.
Or even looking out the window. You know, you're looking at a blank
you don't
white
see a scenery.
canvas. We try and put together the trees, the floor, you know, everything like that.
Put those side by side. We've got the Revit and the realistic rendering, and they're not even close. Like, the rendering is incredible. So that's why it's a huge tool for us to use for clients, is we're ultimately selling them on our ideas and design, and that's a really challenging part of our job. So any tool we can utilize to make that easier is well worth it for us. So we're always leaning into doing new styles of rendering and design and sketching, and any avenue we can use to get there.
Yeah, being able to collaborate on these projects, not just with a client, but also in-house as well. You know, Nick and I being able to come together and share ideas. You know, he can give me that 3D model. I'll put materials on it. I have a little bit of free reign with what's in there. And then sometimes Nick will bring me back. Sometimes I do a little too crazy.
It's good to collaborate.
Yeah,
because
it absolutely is.
Me handing the model off also gives John an opportunity to get familiar with it.
Yeah.
So he can notice something like, if we're looking at these renderings here, this bookshelf in the end, John just mentioned that would be cool if we had, you know, a more interesting feature at the end of the island. So there's a bit of like shared process in the design there that I think is essential for ultimately a really nice looking project that is fun. And this project, we've been really fortunate to have, you know, great homeowners and have a fun, beautiful kitchen to work on.
Yeah, it's been a great project to work on. We're really excited to see this kind of come together as we're getting closer to finalizing some construction documents. Nick's been hard at work trying to get those details all hammered out with timber built, getting all these beams in the right spot, how it's going to look. That's what also these renders really help with, is seeing how these things come together. Yep. So Nick can finalize those details, and then you've already seen our videos of the carriage house, and we're planning on doing the exact same thing for this. Yep. So definitely keep your eye out for that. We're really excited to see this come into fruition. It's going to be a beautiful project, and I'm really excited to see it all come together.
One of these videos, we're going to have the renderings next to the real life, and hopefully they're pretty close. So we're excited. Either that or wildly different.
Wildly.
They changed to linoleum countertops.
Yeah.
But cool.
All right, so start over. Quiet on set.
You got to give her a minute. Please, take your time.
All right.
Oh my God.